From hockey arenas going into apocalypse mode, to fans throwing real-life animals onto the ice. These are 20 things you didn't know about the NHL. I bet you had no idea that even you could play in a real-life NHL game with this crazy loophole. It allowed an insurance salesman, accountant, and a Zamboni driver to play. So each team only has 2 goalies, right? If both get injured, they actually have an emergency goalie. This is someone in the crowd who gets free tickets to every home game and must be there on call in the unlikely event that both do get injured. Each team is required to keep a list of local non-professional goalies. And last season, this happened with the Anaheim Ducks. 27-year-old Tom Hodges, who was an insurance salesman by day, was asked to step in after both starting goalies were injured.
And we do not know what happened to Anthony Stolarz, but 28-year-old Thomas Hodges has been the emergency backup here in Dallas since 2019.
But he did end up letting them score on him.
Heiskanen to Hintz. Back for Heiskanen. Robertson, one-timer, score! It looked like it clipped something. I think it might be Radulov.
Still, it's super impressive that even he got out there and was able to help. And his reaction to playing was priceless.
How are you feeling?
Well, a little out of breath, but I'm doing all right. Yeah.
Well, you looked a little pale between the periods. Can you tell us what was going through your mind when you found out you'd be starting the third?
Yeah, well, it was a little touch and go there. We weren't exactly sure. I just had somebody come in and say, Stoltzy could barely walk and that I was going to have to throw my jersey on. So, probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life, but I'm glad I didn't embarrass myself too much out there.
There have been multiple other emergency goalies who had more success, like David Ayres and Scott Foster. It's okay to make mistakes when you're an emergency goalie, but not if you're prepping the Stanley Cup. Every year when a team wins the Stanley Cup, all the players, coaches, and owners are hand-engraved on it. But I guess there's been some real dumbasses engraving it, because there are some out-of-pocket misspellings. Jacques Plante won the Cup in 5 back-to-back seasons, and his name was spelled differently every time. Names are one thing, but team names? Surely they know how to spell those. But nope. The Boston Bruins were literally spelled with 2 Q's. The Kuskokwim Bruins. The Islanders were spelled the New York Islanders. And the Maple Leafs were spelled Toronto Maple Leafs. The funniest of all, though, is for Frank Selke, the assistant manager of the Maple Leafs when they won. To abbreviate his job title, they just put ass man in parentheses. Hey too, Frank. Your ass will be smelling pretty fishy after you smuggle 1 through security. And that's exactly what Detroit Red Wings fans do before a playoff game. But it's not just any fish, it's an octopus. Once they've got into the arena, which is a task in itself, they do something absolutely insane.
Tonight has become a playoff tradition in Detroit to see an octopus thrown out onto the ice before every home game. But what does it all mean, and when did this tradition
Apparently, this has been a tradition since 1952, when the NHL played 2 best-of-7 series to win the Stanley Cup. So the 8 arms for the octopus symbolize how many games it would take for the Red Wings to win it all. What's even crazier is number 17, when an entire NHL arena got destroyed. In 2013, Alberta, where the Calgary Flames play, had record rainfall and caused the worst flood in Alberta's history. This caused the Bow and Elbow River to completely overflow. The rivers are right next to the Scotiabank Saddle Dome. The water flooded into the arena and completely flooded it over 15 feet above the ice. The CEO of the Flames explained how bad it got.
The tales of up to row 8 or 9 are absolutely true. It sits at now about row 8, and if you put that in perspective from the event level, that means that if you were a hockey player walking out on the tunnel onto the ice, you would be underwater yourself. It is a total loss on the event level. And to the degree that it is greater than that, we do not know, obviously.
Their first game was scheduled for 69 days after the flood. A typical estimate would take 6 months to clean up a flood like this. With tens of millions invested into it, they were miraculously able to clean up the water in time for the season. And honestly, that stadium is pretty old. Maybe they should have just moved arenas? I think we're a little too old to have an imaginary friend, but Sabres owner Punch Imlach didn't think so, because he literally invented a fake player. It was the 1974 NHL draft. The Sabres had picked number 11, and they decided to use it on a Japanese prodigy, Taro Tsujimoto from the Tokyo Katanas. The only issue was, he didn't exist. Imlach had asked his directors of communications, Paul Weiland, to invent a realistic Asian player draft. As a college student, Weiland frequented a spot called Tsujimoto's, so he called up the owner to see if he could use his last name, although he didn't tell him what for.
He said, yeah, they wanted to know what a Japanese boy's name was. So he said Taro was a real popular boy's name.
And the rest was history. Imlach was fed up with the league's super slow draft process, so this was his way to protest. The league didn't even think twice about his pick and made it official immediately. Weeks later, they finally realized Taro wasn't a real player, and the katanas didn't exist. I mean, come on. Buffalo Sabres, Tokyo Katanas, see a resemblance? Now Sugimoto is a Buffalo legend. Die-hard fans still show up to games wearing his jersey. Also, I bet you didn't know that the Stanley Cup is fake. Well, at least when you view it publicly. There's one replica Stanley Cup for fans and one real Stanley Cup for the players to hold and celebrate with. The way to tell is to lift up all 35 pounds and look at the bottom. The real one has the Hockey Hall of Fame logo on the bottom. As time goes on, the cup has only gotten taller and taller as they engrave more names. For hockey, being tall doesn't really matter, at least not like basketball. Though, it can't hurt to have a longer reach and stick length. The average height of an NHL player is 6'1", which compared to the NBA's 6'6", is nothing. But have you ever wondered who the tallest NHL player of all time is? That's Zdeno Chara, and his accolades show that maybe size does matter. He's a Stanley Cup champion, 7-time All-Star, Norris Trophy winner, and even has the NHL record for the hardest slap shot. Oh, by the way, he's 6'9". You don't want to see this guy mad at you on the ice.
Trying to chop it out of the zone. Oh, Chara drops Evander Kane. Evander Kane goes after Chara, punches him while he's down. That's a mistake. The captain tempted to twist his...
Yeah, those linesmen better break them up or things might get nasty. Penguins, on the other hand, were pretty cute. And the Pittsburgh Penguins actually had a real-life one back in the 60s. Thus, Penguin Pete was born. Fans absolutely adored Mr. Pete, and he was learning how to skate.
It was in our second season. A phone call came from out of the blue from a one-time youth hockey player, student at University of Pittsburgh, saying we should get a Penguin, teach him how to skate, have the Penguin lead the team onto the ice.
Unfortunately, Pete was only able to make 6 games before he came down with a case of pneumonia. Sadly, Pete passed away shortly after. The Pens tried to replace him, but it didn't feel the same. And so, the Iceberg was born. In the early days of the NHL, another tradition was born. When a player scores a hat trick, or 3 goals in one game, fans throw their hats onto the ice to celebrate. And it's all different kinds of hats.
Even a cowboy hat.
Many fans wonder what happens to these hats after they're thrown. Well, each team is different. The Flyers have a specific display in the Wells Fargo Center full of hats that have been thrown during hat tricks. The Colorado Avalanche donate every hat that hits the ice, along with 500 brand new ones to Denver Rescue Mission. And sometimes, players get some new souvenirs.
Career. You want to pick one out? There he goes.
They're looking for a hat. Maybe there's one he likes.
This next player definitely needs to be digging out the trash, because he made only $1. Chris Draper was drafted by the Winnipeg Jets late in the second round. After training camp, the Jets decided they didn't want to use him, even though he performed very well. So they loaned him to a minor league for a few years. He played great, and the Red Wings took notice. They wanted to trade for him, but the Jets didn't even need anything for him. League rules stipulated that he had to be traded for something, so they traded him for $1.
And I think it was game 5. I ended up scoring 2 goals, and I was actually first star of the game. And the next day, I'm doing an interview with some of the Detroit media, and I remember doing the interview, and one guy stuck around for a couple more questions, and he just kind of ended the interview. He goes, not bad for a kid traded for $1. And I just kind of, laughed, and I was just like, hold on, what did he just say? And so I actually kind of was like, excuse me, sir, you kind of said something about, $1. I don't understand what you mean by that. And he goes, you don't know? And I said, I don't know what. And he goes, you were traded for $1. And I was just kind of like, wow, okay, that's kind of a kick to the ego right there.
Draper went on to win 4 Stanley Cup titles and to be one of 7 men who played more than 1,000 games for the Red Wings, which might be the worst trade in history. The fastest goal in history is tied 3 ways with 3 different players. Check it.
Last Saturday in Boston and lost 4-3. This game underway. Bradley, Lehman, Anderson for the Maple Leafs. Score! Right off the bat. 5 seconds. McGill
Alex is one of them, but Doug Small and Brian John Trottier also hold the title. Just 5 seconds. A bit longer than how long I last. No, I'd probably last longer with this girl, the only female NHL player ever. Manon Rhéaume lived and breathed hockey. She became the first girl to play in Quebec's International Pee Wee Tournament and the first girl to play in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. There weren't many options for girls to play hockey in the 1980s and 90s. She had to compete against the boys if she wanted to play at all. She played so well that the Tampa Bay Lightning invited her to their training camp after she had helped Canada win gold at the 1992 Women's World Championships. She played in one period of an exposition match with them and became the first and still the only woman to suit up for an NHL game.
Every time I think about it, that walk from my locker room to the ice, like my heart was beating so fast, and it was just overwhelming because when I went to camp, I never thought we'd play an exhibition game, so I had to perform in camp to get that, to earn that exhibition game. So it was crazy, but the most amazing thing is when I stepped on the ice, like the butterfly went away and I was just playing a hockey game. Like I forgot that I was wearing an NHL jersey and that was the first time a woman played in an NHL game. I was just playing hockey, and that's, that was the love that I have for the game, and it was one of the most amazing moments that I'm always going to remember.
She seems pretty chill. Happy for her. Now she helps out at the player development department with the Kings. I bet you know that they keep the NHL pucks in the freezer, but have you ever wondered why they do that? Well, a hockey puck is made of rubber, and if you've ever used a bouncy ball, you know what happens when you drop that on the ground. That's why the pucks are kept in the freezer every game, so they don't get too bouncy. They need to be between -10 and -6.7 degrees Celsius before they're put into play. They're even transported in a cooler to make sure they don't thaw. After a puck has been used for more than 2 minutes, it gets replaced with a new frozen puck so that the consistency is guaranteed no matter what time a player gets in the game. So about 25 to 30 different pucks are used in every NHL game. You can trade pucks during a game, but can you also trade in an arena? The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers try to do just that. Harold Ballard, the owner of the Maple Leafs, was about to go broke. He was really desperate to make something work. So he approached the Edmonton Oilers owner, Pocklington, asking for $50 million in cash and to trade his arena. Toronto had a much bigger market than Edmonton, so Pocklington was totally in favor of this trade. He had been known to make risky trades in the past, like when he traded Wayne Gretzky, but at the last minute, Ballard backed out of the deal with no explanation. But regardless of what arena you play in, you gotta try to win the games. The 1980 Winnipeg Jets didn't seem to get the memo. They went winless for the most consecutive games of all time at 30. They won 9 games, lost 57, and tied 14. Their winless streak included the entirety of November and most of December. On the other side, the 1992 Pittsburgh Penguins hold the record for most wins at 17 straight. Only in 7 games during the streak did the Penguins trail the game for a total of 101-29. Well, nowadays, they're only a shell of that. However, it also seems like $1 million isn't a whole lot for an NHL player. But back in 1971, there wasn't a single player who had made $1 million from the league until Bobby Orr. Orr had just come off a season where he finished second in the league, scoring next to Phil Esposito. He was also coming off his 4th Norris Trophy, all on what was widely reported as earning just $35,000 a year. For reference, the average Canadian family income was $41,000. What a dream. Well, after that year, Orr signed a 5-year deal that would pay him $200,000 a season, making him the first $1 million player. Once that deal was over, he more than doubled his salary with the Chicago Blackhawks at $500,000 a year. Hell yeah, Orr, get that bag. Well, Disney definitely gets their bag from theme parks and for ruining Star Wars. But like Star Wars, in 1992, the NHL partnered with Disney to make a movie. They had low expectations, only putting in a $14 million budget. The film follows the Mighty Ducks, a losing Pee Wee hockey team who are coached to championship glory by a Minneapolis lawyer. It ended up being a surprise success because it grossed over $50 million. It made Disney and other investors want to put their money into hockey, and it drew a ton more viewers to the NHL. And then a real team emerged, the Mighty Ducks. Now the Anaheim Ducks. Eventually they went from a Disney movie to Stanley Cup champions. Crazy story, huh? Sport leagues retire numbers, but it's usually by team. The NHL made an exception with one of the greatest players of all time. Only one. That's for the great Wayne Gretzky. He won 4 Stanley Cups, 9 Hart trophies, and an insane 61 NHL records. So to honor him, the NHL officially retired Gretzky's number 99, so no team in the league can have a player with that number. Honestly, I think that actually helps them, because now they won't be compared to him, which is an impossible task. It also seems impossible to play an NHL game outside, but they've done it. The first NHL game was actually played at a prison. It was informal, but the Red Wings went up against the Marquette Branch Prisoners. But it wasn't until decades later that an official game was played, the Heritage March Classic. Held in Edmonton, this game saw the Montreal Canadiens face up against the Edmonton Oilers in freezing temperatures. Despite the chill, the event was a resounding success, boasting over 50,000 fans in attendance. More outdoor events happened since and have faced equal hype. Being at an indoor game is already cold, so miss me with that. I do really want to see a goalie score a goal, and I bet you didn't know this actually happens. Are you kidding me? How about some more?
Crawford will go to the bench again. Rene will try it. Rene going deep for the empty net. It is bouncing. Score! Pekka Rene! What a goal!
Brodeur controlling. The net is empty. He throws it down and in. He scored a goal. Martin Brodeur.
Only 14 goalies have scored goals, but Martin Brodeur has actually scored 3 on his own. Damn.